Lord of life, we come to you. Lord of all, our Saviour be. Come to bless and to heal with the light of your love.
Good morning. You are welcome to join us as we reflect today on those mysterious but wonderful events that took place at the Sea of Tiberias after the resurrection of Jesus, according to the Gospel of John, chapter 21.
Simon Peter said to the others, "I'm going fishing." "We will come with you," they told him. So they went out in a boat, but all that night they did not catch a thing. As the sun was rising, Jesus stood at the water's edge, but the disciples didn't know it was Jesus. Then he asked them, "Young men, haven't you caught anything?" "Not a thing," they answered. He said to them, "Throw your net out on the right side of the boat, and you will catch some." So they threw the net out and could not pull it back in because they had caught so many fish.
Full circle. Peter had gone full circle. Once he turned his back on the sea to follow Jesus. And now, on that sad, horrible night in Jerusalem, he had turned his back on Jesus and came back to the sea. The same sea, the same boat, maybe even the same spot. But it's not the same Peter. He had changed too much. 3 years walking close to Jesus had changed him. Seeing the love of Jesus transforming the lives of people, even a love so strong that it could heal the ill, and those simple words with that deep, profound wisdom that no one will ever forget. Yes, Peter is a changed man, but also a man who is broken, bearing a cross, a heavy, sad cross. There's a scar running so deep in his heart that he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to live with this, the consequences of what he has done. For he had not just denied, but betrayed his friend. What do you do when your conscience wears you down like that? I think what most of us would do, try and work it off. So this is what Peter's trying to do. He's trying hard to catch fish again. The fisherman of men has become a fisherman of fish again. But this morning there's no fish. They notice a stranger on the shore. The Bible says about 300 yards away. And this stranger is putting together a fire for a barbecue, a fish barbecue. The stranger calls out to them, "Hi, how are you doing? Any luck with the fishing?" "No luck, no fish." "Well, why don't you try again? But this time, cast your net on the other side." And they look at one another. Well, why not? Let's humour the stranger. What do we have to lose? So they cast their nets on the other side. At the moment the nets go into the water, there's a pull, a very strong pull. And I can see Peter putting his feet against the side of the boat, reaching down, heaving up, reaching down, pulling up, so intently focused on what he's doing and the gravity of the moment that he misses the message. But John doesn't miss the message. I think John seldom missed the message. Surely, this is déjà vu. The same stranger, the same voice, the same cry, cast your nets on the other side. A miracle, fish flapping on the floor of the vessel. Peter, look again. It's him. Who? Peter, it's Jesus. And when Peter looks at Jesus, he recognizes the voice and he's overwhelmed. Peter, impulsive as always, just jumps into the water, swims toward Jesus, and there he stands, drenched, shivering, speechless, in front of his master, the friend he had betrayed. What do you say in a moment like this? I think there are no words that can express what's happening here. For Peter has turned his back on Jesus, but Jesus never turns his back on a friend. The first song I learned in school was "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," and now Peter feels the strength of that. Jesus is calling him to a meal again. Listen, he says, "Come and have breakfast with me." No recriminations, no accusations. Come and have breakfast with me. And again Jesus breaks the bread with Peter, like he did that night in Jerusalem. To me, the miracle of this story is not so much the fish, but the love of Jesus. The way that we turn away from Jesus many times, and he always comes back. We give up on life many times, but he always says, give life another try, but this time with me. For the very same Jesus that on that Thursday night broke bread with us, will break bread with us, inviting us to breakfast all the mornings of our lives. I think this was the beginning of a new Peter. And let us now, in the time after resurrection, keep our eyes preened, not on the fish we're trying to catch so desperately today, but look out for the stranger on the shore. Listen for that gentle voice still calling you. Try again. Try to live again, but this time with me. Cast your nets. Cast your faith. Cast your hope. And cast your love. But this time, cast your nets with me. Amen.
The disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Peter heard that it was the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken his clothes off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples came to shore in the boat, pulling the net full of fish. They were not very far from land, about 100 yards away. When they stepped ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and some bread. Then Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net ashore, full of big fish, 153 in all. Even though there were so many, still the net did not tear. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. So Jesus went over, took the bread and gave it to them. He did the same with the fish. This then was the third time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from death.
Empty nets, Lord, moments when the strands that keep my life together seem tenuous. Thin threads, incapable of holding anything of note. My fishing futile, with nothing much to show for all I've done. I sit with Peter and his friends, cold in the dark, my mind's amalgam of faith and uncertainty in equal parts, with hope and fear, not knowing what's for best, what my next move should be. Times when I sit alone, human and very vulnerable, boat drifting in an early morning mist of fearfulness, net snagged on disappointment. And yet you there, walking the edges of my life, calling me to one more effort, your presence tempering the dark, your sunrise scattering the mist. And when I move to try again, your early morning promise offers me warmth and welcome, and the reassurance that my life is lived with you, and the darkness and the mist don't count.
After they had eaten, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these others do?" "Yes, Lord," he answered, "you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Take care of my lambs." A second time Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," he answered, "you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Take care of my sheep." A third time Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter became sad because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" And so he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Take care of my sheep."
Take, oh, take me as I am. Summon out what I shall be. Set your seal upon my heart and live in me.
In the final chapter of the Gospel of John, we find this dialogue between Jesus and Simon Peter. Jesus says to him, "Simon, son of John, do you really love me more than the others?" Meaning more than the other disciples. And Simon Peter would have wanted to say yes, and he does, but he experienced pain while he's answering this question, because Jesus refers to his idea that he's got more love than the other disciples have, that he can quantify his love for Jesus. We remember in Matthew 26 the words of Peter where he said to Jesus, "Even if the others will fall away, I will not, because I love you more. I will be there for you, even if I have to die for you." And yet we know how Jesus' great friend and disciple Peter failed him. When Jesus was arrested, people asked Peter, "Are you not one of them, one of Jesus' people?" And he denied it, said, "No, I'm not." 3 times he was asked by different people whether he belonged to the group of Jesus. And 3 times he denied it, saying, "I don't know the man." When Jesus was arrested, Peter just fled. He left him in the lurch. And now when Jesus asks him, "Do you love me more than the others?" Peter realized that he was arrogant. And he could just say, "Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus asked it again. And Jesus asked it again a 3rd time. Not to punish Peter, but to heal him, to restore him, to enable him to confess 3 times that he loves Jesus, so that the relationship could be restored. Jesus is not interested in punishing us, but he's reaching out to us in the spirit of the suffering servant of whom we read in the book of Isaiah chapter 42, where it says, "The bruised reed he will not break, and the wick that is faintly burning he will not quench." Jesus meets us in our weakness in order to heal us. And as Jesus asking this question 3 times, Peter is breaking down because he realizes that he was wrong. The love that he thought that he had was a human kind of love. But now, after the resurrection of Jesus, Peter's heart is opened to appreciate the love of God that Jesus brought to us. The disciples experience a transformation after the resurrection. They began to understand the words of Jesus when Jesus said, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. Abide in me, and I in you." Love is not something that we generate, something that we carry with us as a tool or as a resource or as a container filled with water for the journey. It is more like the water in which a fish is swimming. We exist within the love of God. The love of God is surrounding us. It is in the love of God that we have our being. The love of God is bringing us together. The love of God is uniting us with Christ, we in Him and He in us. The love of God is binding us together with one another to become one family, one sacred, loving family. Just as the threads of a fishing net are connected with one another, so the love of God is connecting us, is making us whole, is making us one. The crucifixion of Jesus was a terrible human act of cruelty and hatred. But something amazing happened after the resurrection. People's hearts were opened to Christ, to God, to one another, and that is an act of God. We read in the letter to the Ephesians this prayer: may the Spirit give us spiritual strength so that Jesus Christ can live in our hearts, and so that we can be grounded and rooted in love, and that we can experience the dimensions, the mysterious dimensions of the love of Christ, how wide it is, how long it is, how high it is, how deep it is. This love of Christ is not a love that we can contain, but it is a love that will flow through us to our fellow human being. It is a love that demands action. In the letter of John, the first letter of John, chapter 3, we read these words: "Let our love not be just talk, just words, but let our love be genuine. It must be shown in action." When Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" and Peter said, "Yes, I do," Jesus said the first time, "Take care of my lambs." The second time, "Take care of my sheep." And the third time, "Take care of my sheep." Look after one another. Let my love flow through you towards the world, towards one another. I am the good shepherd caring for my people. You must be in me and I in you. And you become the good shepherd, caring for one another. That is how their hearts were opened. You know, we experience strange times at the moment. We are still in the grip of the coronavirus. There were 2 people talking about the coronavirus, and the one said, "It is an act of God." But then the other person said, "No, it's an act of nature." But the opening of hearts, that is an act of God, because in this time something amazing is happening. People are more interested in one another. People's hearts are opened to one another. People volunteer to do something for one another, acts of kindness, delivering food, fetching prescriptions from the chemist and delivering it to people who cannot leave the house, contacting one another with a telephone, through the internet, being interested in what one another is doing. There is something amazing happening at the moment, the opening of hearts, and that is an act of God. May we experience the love of Christ that is forgiving, that is healing, that is restoring. The love of God that binds us together with Jesus and with one another into a new family, the sacred family of God. Amen.